Stream winds, a jet stream dip, an upper level disturbance. This is what's on tap for the early to mid part of next week. So this is Sunday. We get you into Monday and we begin to see those accelerating jet stream winds focused across the northern tier. There's our area of low pressure. There's our cold front. It's going to be a strong cold front that pushes east with moisture streaming to the north. So this is going to trigger the chance for some showers, also some thunderstorms as we go through the early to mid part of next week. There is your forecast on Tuesday with that cold front slowing down across the east coast, but still plenty of moisture in play. And we look at the possibility for shower storms, some of which could be on the strong or severe side. So I want to bring in Dr. Erika Navarro to talk a little bit more about the severe danger once we get into the month of December. You know, it's not one of those months I think that people think of for tornadoes, but it's definitely not out of the question, and it has happened before.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to watch very closely for that potential with this system moving in, because it's still a little bit too early to tell since we have about 6 days to look ahead towards this, but we could be seeing that potential setting up here across portions of the Mississippi Valley as we look towards Monday and Monday night. So these are the areas that we're watching for those storms. Again, it's likely going to be in the upper and mid Mississippi Valley, so maybe up towards Missouri. We could be seeing some very strong winds moving in. Alex mentioned that big jet stream dip that's coming in. Those winds are going to be fairly strong in the mid levels, so that could get translated down to the surface. So we could be seeing some straight line damaging winds here, and maybe even the potential for a supercell or a tornado spin up. You always can't rule out that possibility, just depending on how much instability comes into play.
Right, and some of the areas that we're going to watch for that opportunity for strong storms would be the areas that are more common to see tornadoes during the month of December.
Yeah, that's right. There is an area that we typically look at in December, and it's pretty close to the Gulf Coast here. The dark red is showing you the greatest area of risk in December. The lighter red showing you areas that are fairly typical, so we can't rule out the possibility. These are exactly the areas we're going to be looking at, and even up towards the Tennessee and Ohio Valley, we could also be seeing some stronger storms. But even though that's the area that most commonly gets it, there's the potential that we could see it anywhere. We've had spin-ups here in Washington State.
Yeah.
It's
as you mentioned last hour, Dr. Forbes says it's not impossible to get a tornado anywhere, and this map really shows that. I mean, when we look at the month of December, well, there are areas where it's more focused. There are plenty of areas where we wouldn't expect it that we've had it.
Yeah, so that's why no matter where you are, you always have to listen. You got to be on guard because you just never know what's going to happen. But these red areas showing you where, on average, we've had them. We've had 2 in California per year, 5 here in the state of Texas, but again, the majority of it occurs near the Gulf Coast. So again, it's not typically what you think of as you're heading towards Christmas. Tornado spin-ups are not something that many of us often experience, but we've had tornado outbreaks in December. The most notable one here was on Christmas Eve. 42 tornadoes being reported here in 1982. And if you look here in the 2000s, 2009, we had the same one here, 35, ranking number 4.
Yeah, and even recently, within the past few years, we've had a couple notable, even just single tornadoes into parts of the country. Rowlett, Texas comes to mind. Dr. Navarro, about where that air is going to be coming from and when we can expect to see it.
Yeah, Alex, and once again, we bring up this term jet stream. It says
in space, and fog, one of the coolest things to look at on those satellites. Well, thanks for staying with us here on Weather Underground on this Wednesday. I'm Alex Wilson. Mike Bettis has the evening off, and the warmth continues to be the story, but things will be changing. Let's talk about a place like Denver. Your average first high at or has really been a trend. Dr. Erika Navarro, Tom Nizzle standing by to talk about that temperature trend, which continues to go up, not just over a few years, but really that has been the trend.
Yeah, this is just one example of something that we've been monitoring for the last few decades. We've been seeing a lot of these seasons a bit warmer than average, and that's honestly been the case here for the last 40 or 50 years.
Dr. Erika Navarro here with me to talk a little bit more about that. This is not something you want to mess with. Anytime, and I hear him say damage to the engines, I'm like, no go.
Yeah, and amazing. When I was reading about this, people actually found this out the hard way, which is it's shocking to think about. But here's how it can damage a plane. You would think a big ash plume is not something you want to be flying through, and that is 100% true. So
because immediately you just go, visibility is going to be an issue, right? And you wouldn't want to mess with that. But then we also know that they have got instruments that would allow them. So then we talk about the mechanical problems.
Yes, definitely. So, of course, if you're flying through an ash cloud, that's going to pose some issues there to your visibility. But sometimes these smaller particles, they get lofted up very high up in the atmosphere, and it's actually kind of difficult for the planes to be able to see where those might be. The only giveaway that these particles are there is a glowing haze called St. Elmo's fire that can sometimes be in those areas. Again, this is way up in the atmosphere. But you get these little particles that are pieces of rock and gases and, sediments that can get like wrapped up here in the jet engines.
Right.
If that gets into the combustion chamber, it's really hot inside there. That can actually go in and then come out and solidify on the blades of the plane. That can lead to the engine failure. And that actually happened in one of the British Airlines flights back, I believe, in the 80s, was that all of their engines failed because they flew through this cloud.
Yeah, I mean, incredible stuff. You talk about, hearing stories in the news when anything gets ingested into an engine, you almost have to start over, take the engine apart, look at it, and make sure it's safe to fly. So when you think about these ash clouds, you immediately would think, oh, it must be something like dust. But then when you actually go, actually these are pieces of rock. Yeah. Now I see why I don't want it in the engine.
Yeah, absolutely, yes. So, and you think, those are able to melt. I mean, this can cause a number of issues. The amazing thing is that plane actually landed safely, and there were no injuries reported, which is amazing. But it's not just that. Again, you get the challenges to the visibility. All of these ash cloud can actually mess with the piloting system. So it can get into the electronics and make it difficult to know what airspeed you're flying at. So that's an issue, too, when you're trying to make sure that you're going the right speed here in an airplane. But what scientists are actually doing is trying to measure the projection of how far and how high this ash cloud goes, so that way they can reroute all of the airplanes around this this area, because it's costly, but it's necessary.
But hey, we'll all pay a little extra if it means that our engines keep working. So we're going to turn Woo Air around. Dr. Navarro, thank you so much. We've got a lot more to come tonight on the show.